What is going on, everybody? Welcome into my Week 13 NFL Power Rankings show. It's always a nice rush to the finish line coming out of Thanksgiving weekend. A lot of great action, a lot of movement here this week to break down. It's going to be an interesting one. Before we do get started, if you could do me a huge favor, please do take a second to hit that like button. It really helps me out. And make sure you subscribe for weekly Power Rankings and plenty of more NFL content, including some draft content, heading your way soon. But without further ado, let's get into it, starting at the bottom. And I'm just going to reveal the bottom four here. It's the same bottom four that we had last week. And ironically, the Panthers, Patriots, Giants, Titans, in that order, all played this week. The Titans beat the Panthers. The Giants beat the Patriots. Naturally, those teams gonna be ahead of them here, but I do think these four teams are stuck in a crop below the rest of the league, and I'm also just kind of running out of things to add and say about these teams. Obviously, the Panthers fired Frank Reich. That's gonna be the big headline here at the bottom tier. Very happy they did that. There's still some blame to push elsewhere. I think the owner, David Tepper, getting a lot of heat, and then Scott Fitterer, the general manager, I think should also probably go too. I have really disagreed with a lot of their roster decisions over the last couple of years, and it has really come to the forefront this season. They've got a lot of work to do. Would like to see them pair Bryce Young, for whatever you want to say about him, with a new head coach and general manager pairing. So excited to see where that goes. As for the rest of these teams, just not a whole lot to say. Let's get to the NFL middle class, your frisky middle, if you will. And this is going to start with the Arizona Cardinals at the bottom here. You know, I still think Kyler Murray is going to play them into some games, as we've seen in recent weeks. But when you let Kyren Williams run through your defense and make him look like Walter Payton, that's obviously going to make things a challenge for you. So we know the Cardinals lack a lot of talent on the defensive side of the ball. That was on full display this week. And then speaking of Walter Payton, the Chicago Bears climbing all the way up to number 27 here after beating the Minnesota Vikings. Whether Bears fans are a fan of this or not, I do think Matt Eberflus has coached himself into the coaching chair for the Bears in 2024. That defense really has shaped into form. It kind of single-handedly helped them beat the Minnesota Vikings. You know, you bring in Montez Sweat, Jalen Johnson still playing really well. They're coming together on that side of the ball. And, you know, Justin Fields, while I don't think he's played himself into being the quarterback for the Bears next season, especially because they have that Panthers pick, he is still a starting caliber NFL quarterback that can make some big plays, like we saw him finding DJ Moore to set up the game-winning field goals. So the Bears are a much more competitive bunch than they were in the first quarter of the season or so. Then we have the New York Jets. For those that follow the Fully Inflated Football podcast, I kind of wrote their eulogy last week. This team is utterly depressing to talk about, seeing them try to play offense with the unit that was specifically handcrafted to be run by Aaron Rodgers, right? You put Nathaniel Hackett in there, Alan Lazard without Aaron Rodgers, and bad quarterback play and a disastrous offensive line, and it's unwatchable and it's uncoverable from my point of view. There's nothing left to say about the Jets. Obviously, they still have a great defense, and they're going to be in a lot of games because of that defense. But this is the worst offense in the NFL, and Tim Boyle obviously is not the answer. We'll see what they do moving forward there. Then we have the Las Vegas Raiders staying put at number 25. This feels like a good spot for them, honestly. They definitely are a team that is still kind of the wreckage of Josh McDaniels' team floating at sea, trying to be competitive with whoever runs into them. And that's, you know, a credit to Coach Pierce and some of the players on that team for rallying to stay feisty. This could have really gone south, and they could be in that bottom tier. I don't think they are. And also, Aiden O'Connell has been a much better quarterback than I kind of anticipated here a few weeks ago. So a credit to him as well. But obviously, the Raiders are towards the bottom of the league. Then we've got the Washington Commanders at number 24. And I'm not saying I'm out on Sam Howell. I just, at some point, and we have through next season, because I do think he's going to be their starter next year, he's got to be more reliable, consistent, and stop putting the ball in harm's way so much and stop taking so many sacks. I know this week was against Dallas. That was inevitable. But it's just like, man, when is that big interception coming? When is he going to be trying to play hero ball and fumble? It's like he's shown that he can play. I mean, hell, I think he still leads the NFL in passing yards. He's shown that he has traits and can extend plays. But is he a franchise quarterback? I am not ready to say yes on that. So I want to see him finish the year stronger. Obviously, the Commanders' defense, after trading away those edge rushers, is basically useless. I don't think firing Jack Del Rio is going to change things here. This team is very much like the Raiders, just kind of floating through the wind right now, trying to get through the season. Then we have the Cincinnati Bengals. This is why we drop these teams so much when their quarterbacks go down. And even though this defense kept them in there to the best of their ability against the Pittsburgh Steelers, you turn the keys over to a quarterback with no experience, it's just going to be incredibly difficult to win football games. So the Bengals are in for a rough last month of football here. I do believe that. Then we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Look, this defense actually has not been what they were to start the season. They've had some injuries there. You definitely felt Levante David's absence against the Indianapolis Colts with their run game and the RPOs. You missed his presence in the middle of that defense. But Todd Bowles has got to tighten this thing up, man. The NFC South is still in play for the Tampa Bay Bucs. But I do think Bowles is very much on the hot seat right now, especially because the defense is supposed to be his thing. Offensively, Baker's going to throw his haymakers. I'd continue to just have very little to add to what they're doing offensively. They've just been inconsistent, if not solid, all season long. Now, before we reveal our next team here, if you are a fan of any of these 10 or so teams that we just revealed, and they're out of the playoff mix and you're losing interest in the NFL season, but you don't really want to, well, let me tell you, Underdog Fantasy is the best way to spice up any football game. I'm sure you've seen the screenshots of people playing their pick'em contests where you're playing higher or lower on player stats, anything from passing yards to fantasy points to sacks to tackles, field goals, you name it. You can get up to 20 times your entry if you hit on all 5 of your picks. You can go for just 2 or 3. You can buy insurance, so you're allowed to miss on one. But Underdog has been a blast with small number entries that even if you lose, it feels like you're winning because you are way more invested in any given football game, trying to see it out if that backup running back gets his 12 rushing yards that you need. You know what I'm saying? So check out Underdog Fantasy, and when you sign up, use promo code TFG. They will match up to $100 on your first deposit, and you'll support my channel in a big way. That's promo code TFG at Underdog Fantasy. But then at number 21, we've got a drop here for the Minnesota Vikings, who obviously lost to the Chicago Bears just last night on Monday Night Football. It's concerning that Josh Dobbs has continued exactly what we saw in Arizona, where comes in literally basically off the street, gets a fresh playbook with a small playbook, and is allowed to play fast, play free, use his legs, don't overthink it. And then as the weeks go on, they try to implement more of a structured offense, implement more of the playbook. And although Josh Dobbs is a brilliant human off the field, I don't think the game moves all that fast for him when he has a lot on his plate. I think he's better off when it's read and run, play action boots, QB designed runs. Where was that against the Chicago Bears? Very little scrambling, very little bootlegs, very little QB runs. And maybe that's on Kevin O'Connell to admit that this is how you have to use Josh Dobbs, or maybe they go to Jaron Hall. I don't know, but the reality is when he stepped in, Josh Dobbs was giving them good quarterback play. But just like we saw in Arizona, how long can he sustain that type of play? And I'm very worried about that. Obviously, you got to give Brian Flores' defense a ton of credit for what he's been able to do on that side of the ball, and the Vikings are far from out of it here, but they have a lot of concerns offensively, even if Justin Jefferson's coming back soon. But then we have the New Orleans Saints at number 20. I mean, Saints fans, I wish I could say I hate to say I told you so, but I would love to say I told you so. The Derek Carr experience is the Derek Carr experience, and you overpaid for a bottom 12 starting quarterback in the NFL who's gotten you stuck in purgatory. He is, in my opinion, the worst red zone quarterback in modern NFL history. He freezes in that area. The interception to Jesse Bates that goes for 6 ends up being the difference in this game, just staring down his man. If he just sees Jesse Bates flying on the slant and looks left, he's got a wide open touchdown. And Falcons fans are watching this laughing because they thought Matt Ryan was the worst red zone quarterback ever. No, it's actually Derek Carr. So they can move the ball between the 20s. They're a frisky defense, but it's just not a winning product. And this team continues to be just completely stuck in purgatory. And what's frustrating is they bought their ticket to go there. So the Saints are going to drop down 2 this week. They still might win the NFC South. The somebody's got to win it NFC South. But obviously, this was a step in the wrong direction, letting the Falcons take first place in that division. And that is going to be our number 19 team here, the Atlanta Falcons. I was curious to see what Arthur Smith was going to do coming off the bye week, getting Desmond Ridder back into the mix, and using Bijan Robinson. There you go. Give him 25 touches, let the fireworks endure. And the defense played much better this week. I mean, the Jesse Bates signing, not just the interception that obviously changed the game, he peanut punches a ball out in the second half there, too. He has been worth every single penny, has restaked his claim as the best safety in the National Football League at like $16 million a year. What a great signing there, really elevating this defense in a lot of ways. So the Falcons take first place in the NFC South. They're going to become the highest ranked team in the NFC South. I think they are probably the most talented team remaining, and will probably get through this easy schedule 8-9, 9-8, and end up winning this division and playing in a playoff game. And Arthur Smith probably going to keep his job. That's really where we're at with this team. Then we have the most frustrating team in the league now and really over the last 10 years, the LA Chargers, who any given week are going to be able to beat pretty much anybody. They were right there against the Baltimore Ravens. But I'm sick of it. This team not making any changes, still Brandon Staley at the helm. They've been showing all the stats about this team in one-score games. They've lost at this point way more one-score games than like any team in the league over the last 2 years. And it's just like, how does that happen when you have a quarterback like Justin Herbert? It's brutal. Another one this week, and I'm fed up pretending like this team can have any semblance of consistency. They almost belong in their own little tier here in the middle of like bad one week, good the next, but I'm just going to lump them in here in the middle and move on. Then we got the LA Rams at number 17. They've rattled off a couple of wins since Matthew Stafford came back, and man, getting Kyren Williams back was huge for this offense. And, we can talk about Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford, and obviously those guys are important to this team. But in that losing streak, they had lost Kyren Williams and lost their run game. And he's a real player, man. He's got some of the best vision in the league. He's just a really complete back. Even if he's small and slow, he's just a really good running back. He's so impressive. He was their offense this week. So, that's a really fun side of the ball. Defensively, they have Aaron Donald. It's actually, their secondary is actually making some plays the last couple of weeks. So the Rams are right in the mix here. Someone's going to have to get the 7 seed and the 6 seed in the NFC. The Rams very well might be that team. Then we have the Indianapolis Colts at number 16. They really impressed me this week. And, Colts fans, I didn't raise them up after they beat the Panthers and beat the Patriots because those are bottom tier teams. And I was just like, okay, yeah, they beat them in rather unconvincing fashion. And this week was much more impressive. I mean, the Bucs aren't anything special, but the play calling from Shane Steichen just wows you any given week, and it was especially good this week against the Bucs. Just the 4th down calls, the play fakes, the misdirection, the RPOs, the run game. They manufacture offense. Forget about the fact that it's a backup quarterback and they don't have really explosive playmakers. They have good players with Pittman and Downs and Taylor and Zach Moss, and they they tap into those guys and put them in the best position to succeed, and that's a credit to Shane Steichen. Gardner Minshew has turned around and played much better these last 3 weeks too. So the Colts are right in this thing too. Their schedule is not difficult coming up. If they go 10-11 wins this year and sneak into the playoffs, nobody should be all that surprised. And then get ready for the hype train next year with Anthony Richardson coming in. Anything that happens with this Colts team is house money, so they're in a good spot. Also, Samson Ebukam, by the way, shout out him. He made Tristan Wirfs his son this week. Really impressive performance by the pass rusher. Then we get the Green Bay Packers at number 15. This team really has been a completely different team in the last month of football, and Jordan Love has stacked the best performance of his career, his young career now, the last 4 weeks. He's really building up his own confidence. The accuracy is coming along, the play extension, the confidence, all on full display in really what was a dismantling of the Detroit Lions on Thanksgiving. You look at that defensive line full of first-round picks. Rashawn Gary is a monster. They're set to get, hopefully, Jair Alexander and Eric Stokes back in that secondary. The Packers at this point might actually be the odds-on favorite to get not just the 7 seed in the NFC, but the 6 seed, given that their schedule after this week against the Chiefs lightens up. So it really has been a complete role reversal for the Green Bay Packers, who just a month ago, it looked like things were going in the wrong direction. Love was looking like maybe he isn't the answer, and it has taken a complete U-turn, and there is credit to go around all across the board, even all the way up to the top, to Brian Gutekunst, who some of his young players are really stepping up here in the second half of the season. And by the way, it makes sense that the youngest team in the NFL is shaping into form and getting better in the second half. So definitely a good time to be a Packers fan, but they're not quite going to crack our third tier, which is going to consist of kind of true playoff caliber teams, but teams that I would not consider Super Bowl contenders. And that is going to start with the Seattle Seahawks, whose fall continues. And they're very, very much at risk of falling into the NFL middle class. They just have not been impressive the last couple of weeks. The defense just doesn't feel very well coached, in my opinion. They lack an identity there. And offensively, they have no plan. They have no real concept of, talk about what we talked about with the Colts, where they put these guys in the best position to succeed based on their skill set. The Seahawks feel like this just collection of talent where it's like, well, I guess, this drive, let's try a deep fade to DK. We should probably mix in a play action boot, and we should probably run once. Like there's no stacking and like setting up plays. There's no real game plan there. Geno can be kind of inconsistent at times too. So it just has not felt good for the Seahawks. They're just at the beginning of this brutal schedule. They got dismantled by the 49ers. They're like 8-point underdogs or something against the Cowboys here on Thursday night, and I don't see this thing heading in the right direction. They are at serious risk of getting to 6-8 and then having to win 2 out of 3 or 3-0 to make the playoffs. It's not looking good for Seattle, but I will still give them credit for the roster talent that they have to say maybe they can steal one of these and survive in this tier. We'll see how it goes. But then we have the Pittsburgh Steelers at number 13. Hey, the Matt Canada firing. I would say the offense played better against the Bengals. Obviously only 16 points, but they did move the ball. Kenny Pickett had his best performance on the season. Multiple big throws in this game. The dime down the field to Deontay Johnson. Also, I think they had like 8 or 9 completions over the middle of the field. So love the honesty to say, hey, let's utilize the middle of the field. Pat Freiermuth, welcome back. Holy crap. So I'm not trying to rave about this offense, but hey, this team is in position to really compete for the AFC North and get a playoff spot here. And obviously we know what that defense can do every given week. So the Steelers are in a pretty good spot right now. And then the Cleveland Browns at number 12. They got to come down, man. The offense with Dorian Thompson-Robinson, it just doesn't really work right now. He can make a couple nice throws, use his feet a little bit, but he's a real backup. He's a day 3 rookie, and he feels like it when you watch him play. Also, Browning pretty hard this week. early in this game, they come out and try to do like the QB sneak thing with a tight end, and they fumble the snap and just give Denver all the momentum. Just a reminder that Brown's going to Brown at times. The defense is still the defense, but there's only so much they can do when they're on the field all game. So they're going to come down. They're like a better version of the Jets, where they at least have an offensive line and a pretty good play designer. Unlike the Jets, both those teams obviously have elite defenses. But yeah, they need to win in a very specific way, and they got to take better care of the football. So -2 for Cleveland and a teardrop for Cleveland. At this point, we kept them in the Super Bowl maybe tier after they beat Pittsburgh. But now seeing a loss like that against the Broncos, it's just kind of impossible to imagine this team stringing together 4 straight weeks of dominance to actually win a Super Bowl. So they're going to come down. Then we have the Denver Broncos, who beat the Cleveland Browns, and it is time to fully give them their respect. They have beat some really good teams on this stretch. Hell, even their win against the Packers is looking better right now than it did at the time. They've won, is it 4 straight, 5 straight? I mean, they've found their formula. They're playing so much better defense, so a credit to Vance Joseph there, but especially offensively. I mean, the combination of the run game, the offensive line, Russ playing good quarterback play, not amazing or anything, but good quarterback play, and Courtland Sutton really coming on, playing his best football of his career probably. This is a good football team, man. They are in a really nice spot where they might actually make the playoffs. But if they don't, you can kind of see the plan here. And they actually have draft picks now and can kind of start to build Sean Payton's vision for this team moving forward. So it's just been the most positive that Broncos fans have probably felt since Payton retired. And you got another Payton there to give you hope, I guess. But that trade for Sean Payton, I think, was very much worth it. Like, he's doing a really good job getting this team to buy in and put this thing together. So I've just been impressed, man. Then the Houston Texans, we've been impressed by them all year. They dropped to the Jaguars this week in a really tight game, but Stroud continued to play well. These receivers played well. But I think you really felt the lack of pass rush, the lack of a run game. Like, they still have some missing pieces on this team, but man, I'm still impressed by their ability to hang with the Jags, and they have a huge game against Denver this week. And the winner of that game very well might be going to the playoffs here in January. So, I mean, what's left to say about the Texans at this point? They've just had a dream of a season. Then we're going to climb up a tier, and Lions fans, I am still going to keep you in this tier, though a large part of that is that they are in the NFC that doesn't have quite as much of a deep group of teams. Detroit deserves this drop, -3 here, not just getting kind of blown out by the Green Bay Packers. Obviously, a garbage time touchdown made it look a little bit closer, but just, the week before, the Bears took it to them, and they had to kind of scrap out a win against that team. Wasn't long ago that the Ravens embarrassed this squad. So we're starting to see some warts on this team. Jared Goff being a quarterback that, against the Ravens showed that he's not going to really add much out of structure. And then the last couple of weeks, the turnovers starting to stack up for Jared Goff. He has really regressed, honestly, at this point. That's like 8 straight quarters where you just don't really trust him dropping back to protect the football, whether it's interceptions or fumbles. The offensive line is not impenetrable right now with those guard injuries. Taylor Decker did not have a good day against Green Bay, so they're showing some issues. I still think they will respond. They have incredible coaching and Ben Johnson and a very good culture and locker room that is equipped to get hot again against some lesser opponents and retake some momentum heading into the playoffs. But I really do think that a lot of my criticisms about this team for not investing in pass rushers and corners and potentially more upside at quarterback for the long term, some of those concerns are now starting to come a little bit more to the forefront here in the second half of the season. And they're going to have to, I think, have a better offseason next year than they did this most recent offseason if they want to be a real Super Bowl contender. That's what this has always been about. There's no doubt that the Lions are a really freaking good team, but do they have the talent at premium positions to take that final step up? And maybe they are just a year away from that. But in the NFC, Could they get lucky and find themselves in the Super Bowl? I can't say it's impossible at this point. They're still a really good team. Got to find some answers on defense, by the way. Just period. That's pretty self-explanatory. They've been horrible there the last couple weeks. Then I am going to have the Buffalo Bills at number 8. Even though they lost this week in Philadelphia in a monsoon, if Josh Allen's going to play quarterback like that, they can literally beat anybody. And they obviously go to overtime against the Eagles. I mean, you can make a very strong case that Josh Allen's been the best quarterback in the NFL this year. The defense hasn't had his back. He's had a couple of games where he's shit the bed, so I understand that. But for the overwhelming majority of the season, he's been a bad, bad man. And what a game that was against the Eagles. And I think offensively, they've really found their momentum since moving on from the offensive coordinator and going with Joe Brady. So I wouldn't want to play the Bills right now, man. I know their defense got picked apart in the second half against the Eagles. They've got all those injuries there, and that's something they're going to have to deal with. But I walked away impressed by the Buffalo Bills, even though they fall short in overtime and kind of choked the lead a little bit at the end there. But I am going to have the Miami Dolphins at number 7. Very little to add this week. You know, they just kind of showed up and beat the Jets with how that offense played, and then you get the pick 6 from Javon Holland on a Hail Mary at the end. And after that, it was like, yeah, they came out in the second half and just kind of threw away the playbook. They're like, why should we show our hand to other playoff contenders when we can just walk out of here running bubble screens and all that? I will say they're going to get passed up by the Jags here, who did impress me this week. I went back and forth on these teams. If Jalen Phillips didn't get hurt for the year for the Dolphins, I'd probably have the Dolphins at 6, but you know, I will say that Tua is making a lot more mistakes lately. The offense has inarguably been worse than it was in the first 6 weeks of the season. They aren't that historic world beater right now, and I'm not expecting them to be moving forward because I think the league has caught up to some of that quick motion stuff that McDaniel was running. But a big consolation there was Jalen Phillips and Jalen Ramsey, and the defense was really coming on. And I think losing Jalen Phillips, who at his best is their best pass rusher and a potentially elite pass rusher, is quite the blow for that defense that they're going to have to come up with an answer for. And then this is also a credit to the Jacksonville Jaguars, who beat a good Texans team this week. Trevor Lawrence continues to string together really impressive performances, and this defense is incredibly underrated. They're a very complete unit. This has been the same group of guys now that, you know, they went hard on free agency last year. They drafted some pieces, and they're really clicking in with this system under Coach Caldwell, with all these guys healthy and playing together right now. I mean, Devin Lloyd's having a great year. You see Darius Williams balling out on the outside. Josh Allen's having a great year. Falorenzu Fadukasi, their D tackle, is in there playing much better than the last month. They're flying around. They've been a really underrated defense, and they're starting to get things to be a little bit more consistent offensively. You know, Trevor's taking good care of the football. They're getting Calvin Ridley going these last couple of weeks. They're kind of a sleeping giant right now, and the AFC is, while deeper than the NFC, it's kind of wide open. And I still will continue to say, why not the Jacksonville Jaguars? They are very interesting, especially if they can get that 1 seed now, which is very much in sight. But I'm not quite ready to push them over the Baltimore Ravens, whose defense was really the, stole the show highlight of their week. The offense was very much like, we're just going to run the ball against a soft Chargers defense. And, Lamar didn't even have his best game, but when they can play complementary football like this and they can put together specific game plans because they have so many different answers for everything, they're just a really complete football team, right? So, Coach Mack and that defense, Jadeveon Clowney having such a good year. The Ravens are awesome, man. Then we got the Dallas Cowboys at number 4, just boat racing the Washington Commanders on Thanksgiving, as we all pretty much expected. I think even most of Commanders fans saw that coming. This is what they do. They are well equipped to put the pedal down on these horrible football teams. But can they do that and step on the throat of the great teams? And look, Cowboys fans, if you're upset with this ranking, just show a little bit of patience, because they got the Seahawks this week, which, they should probably beat them pretty handedly. But, they're going to play Detroit, they're going to play the Eagles, and they're going to play the Bills in the next few weeks. So we're going to get an answer for just how much can Dallas show up against the real good teams. But there's no doubt that there is an incredible collection of talent here, that their defense is incredible. DeRon Bland, what a find he's been for them here in year 2. And Dak Prescott, in my opinion, should be much higher in those MVP rankings than he is right now. He is putting together an incredible run of quarterback play. And if he shows up and does that and picks up a win or two against these great teams, it's very realistic that Dak Prescott could and should win the MVP. Then we've got our top tier, and the Kansas City Chiefs at number 3 are debatable. At the end of the day, they still were a dropped MVS pass away from beating the Eagles, and people forget that's because their defense is creme de la creme. This group is awesome. They have players at all 3 levels. They have one of the best defensive coaches in the league in Spags. Oh, and by the way, that guy Patrick Mahomes is pretty good. So I know they're not the world-beating Chiefs that are going to blow teams out, but their ability to finish games and play complete games and play team football, to me, still has them as the front runners in the AFC. But then at number 2, Eagles fans are going to be big mad about this, but I've got the Eagles at number 2 and the 49ers number 1. And I'll just say this, Eagles fans, go out and prove it this week. Go beat the Niners at home as a 3-point underdog. Yes, you heard that right. Vegas agrees. The Niners are visiting the Eagles this week, and they're favorites by 3 points. That's massive. That's almost Vegas saying there's a tier between the Niners and the Eagles. And I talked about the Chiefs not necessarily being world beaters. You can make the same case about the Eagles. I really don't think they are elite offensively, and I don't think they're elite defensively. They're just very good on both sides. The Niners just might be elite in both phases. I mean, they scare the piss out of me just watching them play. This is an incredible collection of not just talent, but coaching and intensity. Like, this team plays pissed off like a bunch of angry bears with rabies. Like, it is so nasty, this team, and what they can do to you. So maybe I'm glazing up the Niners, but I sat here and thought about this, and I was like, I don't know, man. I think the Niners are just better than the Eagles, and they're getting hot and healthy right now. And then I checked the spread, and I'm like, wow, Vegas really agrees with me. Like, you'd think maybe a pick 'em in Philly. No, they're 3-point favorites in Philadelphia. So Eagles, just go out, beat the Niners, get it done. You'll be number 1 next week. But I think with where these teams are sitting right now, I'm taking the Niners there. So there's your power rankings this week. Really fun one. Thank you so much for watching. Drop your comments down below where you agree, where you disagree, and we'll see you soon for more content. Peace out.